All right, guys, welcome to Shmoocon Epilogue. We're going to get started. Hey, I'd like to introduce to you guys Keith Rhodes. He's the CTO of Kinetic, our host for today. Let's give him a big round of applause.
So I guess I qualify as your executive sponsor. We made certain that at least one of the major food trips is here. They put a Red Bull for everybody. I would like to thank you all for coming. I appreciate this very much. I guess I'd say that probably all of you have seen the President's executive order that just came out. It's an executive order. What do you want? Point I guess I would make is an event like this, one of the reasons I wanted to sponsor it was that having had a career in counterintelligence, we always had a following phrase: how do you thank someone who doesn't exist for something that never occurred? That's what I'd like to do now, is thank all of you.
Your effect. Anyway, although this isn't anything new, from like I wanted to give a presentation to people that are maybe trying to learn the same thing from the perspective of somebody that is currently learning it. So how many of you in the audience have ever done malware analysis? Right, so good. Like how many people have professional careers of doing malware analysis? All right, so we got 3, 4. All right. So this won't be totally boring. Okay, so for those, actually, so I'm Grecs. That's my little logo. This is where I live. I started my career doing a lot of cool things, doing web app pen testing, and there was all this cool stuff going on. Unfortunately, because of like career options, I just had to move on. Started doing, like I said, security engineering and security project management, things like that. Got into, unfortunately, doing like some FISMA stuff and diacap, things like that. And then even now, every once in a while, I get pulled into doing props and fun stuff. So I do I create a lot. I've created a lot of this. Meanwhile, like the early to mid 2000s, there was all this cool stuff going on, and I'm just like I'm creating this, but there's all this interesting stuff going on, and creating all that paperwork really wasn't solving this problem that we see on the page here. So that made me want to do this, although not this early. So I decided to, think a bit. Right now, I'd say for the past year and a half, I've, still producing a lot of this, some of that, but been at least doing some hands-on type stuff, doing trade studies with some of the different security products that are out there. So I'm, drinking good stuff of this, obviously not here. So in the evenings, I try to do some hands-on stuff just to keep the skills up. I try to showcase that on this website right here, which I hope everybody knows of. So, and one of the things, I earn so much money doing this site. No, but one of the things that I wanted to say is that we're always looking for local folks that want to blog or cross-post to get more exposure, either of their name or of their blog or whatever. You're not going to make a lot of money. I don't even know what the woman on the bottom right is doing, but but what I can say, in working, has anyone ever worked at home like this? Trust me, you do not get any work done. But I was thinking, as we're offering like little, token amounts of money, or think of the cost of amount of beer, all right, so you can either choose, like come up to a meetup, I'll buy you a beer, or like a few bucks. But as I said, we're always looking for bloggers, and there's this bit.ly, which you can't see, but it's NIST, which is Nova InfoSec Portal sub-article, if you're interested. But anyway, that's all. So overall, I'm I'm one of these, and we finally get to the meat of the content. So agenda, what I wanted to do was just give overall like a disclaimer, and then I wanted to go in and talk about the environment that you need to set up first, and then a basic 3-step methodology, and then where you can learn more. The intent here is to give somebody a start of where they can begin to explore a full career in doing malware analysis. But from my perspective, the way I see it is it gives somebody that maybe is an incident responder or an analyst the ability to do some basic triage to figure out what's going on, some quick and dirty stuff, so that, you know, and then if it does turn out to be really something bad, then, you know, I would pass it on to the guys that do malware analysis full-time. So disclaimer, like I said, I'm not a malware analysis expert, and I usually find that by doing presentations and learning or teaching others, that helps me learn better. But, you know, and then obviously this is something that Andy had me at, and I gave a similar talk over at Nova Labs last month, and Andy, who's right there, he's like, oh, you got to put this in, you know, so, you know, don't analyze malware on production systems. So just as a warning, obviously, because, you know, you might, you know, and by production, this is like your home machine that, you know, that you do your taxes and you're quick, like, don't put it on there either. So, the basic environment, there's usually 2 ways to do it. You have your virtual one and your physical environment. So if you have a lot of space, I mean, having the physical machines to do stuff on is definitely more realistic. And it's also great because a lot of malware now has little hooks built into it, so it'll go and try to detect, oh, I'm in a VM, so it's going to shut down. So in some cases, you might have to use a physical environment, but in most cases, and in terms of just getting started out, the virtual environment is where most of us will start. So, you know, I've always used VMware, their products. For those that don't want to spend an arm and a leg on getting that license, you can. They still have the VMware player, although that's more restricted. And I know a lot of people like VirtualBox, which is a I've heard good things and I've heard bad things about it. So, but it is an option. You also have the options of, whenever you analyze malware, of doing it on a single box, or you can add a little bit more of a realistic component to it by having a second box that emulates a network gateway. So that if the malware will only activate if it can go, if it detects a network connection out to the internet or something like that, you know, you may have that dual box set up. But I think for most cases, like I'm going to talk about both there, but for most cases, you know, just learning and just doing some of that basic triage malware analysis, the single box is good in most cases. So the single box, this is what I'm calling the victim here, but this is just an example checklist of maybe how you want to set it up. I don't know, has anyone heard of Metasploit Unleashed, that class? So if you go to that website, they give you some basic instructions of how to set up, say, like an older Windows XP Service Pack 2 or Service Pack 3 box. And so that's a great place to start. It kind of helps you turn off all the annoying things and turning off all the security features like your firewall and your automatic updates and annoying alerts and things like that. So the next thing you would want to do would be to add your target software. So if the malware is focused on, say, PDF or Java or whatever, you need to install those apps too. A lot of times these things get patched, and it's really hard to go back and find the older version. So, there's two of the most popular sites for finding older versions of software is oldversion.com and oldapps.com. So those are some good places to start. Obviously, though, you may have to use your Google foo to find some of the other software. So then, then continuing with the single box or setting up your victim process monitor, which is a sysinternals product, but now Microsoft owns them. So this is a great tool to get started, just so that as you run the malware, whenever you're doing dynamic analysis, you can kind of watch what it's doing. Any sort of network sniffer, such as Wireshark, to capture the network traffic that the malware may be sending. Red shot, so that you can look at, you can take a shot of what the registry looks before running the malware, and then take another shot what it looks like after running the malware, and do this diff so that you can see any settings that may have changed there. And then lastly is TCP view. So it's basically the same thing as doing like netstat minus AN, but on a Windows box it's just a little cleaner, and you can start it up and it'll log them, and then you can export that log. I have links in the bottom right or the bottom left, as you can see, to most of those tools. And then other dynamic analysis tools. There's this malware analysis pack. It isn't in production per se anymore, but you can't find it out at the site. It's on the bottom there. But it has, it does a lot of different things. One of the things is it provides a fake DNS server, so that's good if you want to emulate the network while using a single box. So you can set that up so that whenever the malware calls out looking for a specific domain, this fake DNS server will capture that request, create a response, and send it back. So that's one way that the malware thinks that, oh, I'm online, so I can unlock now. The other one, which was written by the authors of Practical Malware Analysis, is FakeNet. It does a lot of things. So it does the same thing, not just for DNS, but also for HTTP, SSL, and it also has a customized dummy listener, so that you can set it up to do different things. The other thing that I like about the map tool is to the context menu. It adds some convenient right-click option, so you can right-click on it and get the MD5 hash. You can right-click on it and select strings, and it'll automatically go through and pull out any readable text that's in that malware. And then they even have a virus total option, so it'll take the MD5 of the file and submit it to virus total to see if anybody's reported it, which is nice because you're not actually submitting, the actual malware out. You're just sending the MD5 up. So if your company is very strict on trying to keep what they find internal, that works well. So then, so there's usually two aspects to malware analysis. There's the dynamic aspect, so that's when you put the malware on and you have all these tools that just kind of watches what the malware is doing, and so that's more, so it's more behavioral. So the second part, which is a little bit more harder, is the static analysis. So that's when you use tools like Ollie Debug and IDA to go in and really look at what the code's doing from a assembly language perspective. For Ollie Debug, there's a nice plugin just for doing some of the basic things called Ollie Dump. A lot of times malware is encoded or encrypted in some way. So what you can do is you can use Ollie Debug to start the malware up, and then the malware will have to unpack itself, and then it'll unpack itself into memory, and then you can use Ollie Dump to actually pull the malware from memory. So you save the time of having to try to figure out how that malware is packed. And IDA Pro, this is, there's a super expensive one, but they also have a freeware one that you can use. And BinText is, one of the first things that most folks do is they'll run strings. And so BinText is another Windows-based tool that'll go through and pull out all the readable strings that are in the malware. And then obviously, since you're gonna have to put in some standard text editor, the tool that people seem to go to. Plus, there's a lot of great plugins and templates for it. Is 010. So just search for that. I have the link down at the bottom there. And then you may have spent, depending on what format the malware is in, you may. There are different tools that can do some automated static analysis, such as with PDF files. There's how do you say it? Theodore Stevens. He has a great site, which I have the link there on the bottom, with about 5 or 6 different PDF analysis tools. Flash, and then there may be some others. There's some great online viewers for Java and JavaScript as well. So first, you have your base Windows box, your victim, and so before you do anything, you want to you definitely want to keep it at least in VMware, what's known as host-only mode, so that it can't get out of your virtual environment. You can temporarily change it to NAT if you need to download the malware from somewhere. Other ways to get the malware on is obviously like a write one CD, and or if you can still find them, there's USB keys that actually still have a physical write protect switch. And a while ago, I did some research, and these were the two that I found inexpensive. You're talking anywhere from $25 to $50, depending on what you need. So, but then you snapshot your VM, and that's your starting point. So then the other thing that I want to talk about which may be a little bit more advanced, is adding that second server, so that your victim box thinks that it's on a real network. So the other thing too is the malware may be, like on your victim box, the malware itself may be affecting or it may be contaminating the things that you're recording. So what this does too is it also gives you a nice independent source, so that you can watch traffic without knowing that the malware isn't having much effect on it. So you can implement it as like just some Linux server. Definitely want to, and then for your victim box, you want to set the default network route to be that Linux server. And you probably, in most cases, just want to use static fixed IP addresses. Some of the services that you may want to start up, or some of the same stuff that we talked about previously, such as DNS, HTTP, IRC, if it communicates over that mechanism, and there's a host of other protocols that you may want to enable, but it depends on, based on maybe you did the single box version first, and you saw the services that it's calling out to, so then you could go, and then whenever you do your more advanced analysis and set up your second box, you can set it up customized for that piece of malware. So then on your second box, you would basically do the same thing. There's Wireshark, obviously. So any network tool. So you've got Wireshark, Netcat. This is great if you just needed to, like if it's looking for some specific odd port, you can start that up and at least have a listener there. And obviously you can do, like, instead of doing netstat -an or using TCP view to see what ports are open, you can use a tool like Nmap to get an external perspective of what ports that it's open. So same thing like the victim box, you just snapshot it so that you can revert back. The kind of last set of things that I wanted to talk about from an environment perspective are there's a bunch of pre-configured tools that are out there. So, I think initially I would recommend setting up your own servers and your own victim to do your malware analysis on. But if later once you know it, these are quick environments that you can just set up. So the first one is REM Knox. I think Andy, did I spell it right now? All right, cool. So it was created by Lenny Zelser. A lot of, and it's available in an ISO format, or you can download a VMware image of it. It does both. It's great for doing both static and dynamic analysis. From a static analysis perspective, this is where instead of setting up your victim box, you could use this to just load the malware on, and it has tools for doing some static analysis of that malware, such as Office documents, PDF files, JavaScript, Flash, whatever. And it also has some memory forensics tools too. So on your victim box, if you can get a snapshot of memory, then you can do some analysis on REM Knox too. The other way that it's very useful is you can use it as that second server that I talked about. So you can it basically has a lot of different network services that you can start up. So then you would set your victim box. You would set that gateway to be the REM Knox box, and it basically lets the victim box think that it's on an open network. And then I think the last one is, well, not the last one, but is all right. Anyway, that's what it looks like. It's based on Ubuntu. So it's kind of like the current version. It looks similar to the current version of Backtrack. I don't think it's been updated in a while, so there's there's a lot of folks that are calling for Lenny to update it some. So although it's basically free, so I don't know. He's but that's one start. The other one is it's Rob Lee uses the SANS or Sift, the SANS investigative forensic toolkit. He uses this in one of his SANS classes. It's definitely a lot, where REM Knox is just doing some of the basic stuff. This is definitely much more comprehensive, but it's in one of those cases where you're only going to use maybe 5% of the tools, but it has all the good stuff there. So that's a good place to start. It's available in an ISO as well as a virtual appliance, and it's useful for doing similar to REM Knox. It's good for doing both. You can use it in cases where you're doing both static and dynamic analysis. So this is what it looks like. This is one tool that it has PDK for doing PDF analysis. Okay, so the last one. So who's heard of CuckooBox? All right, no. Okay, so whoever raises their hand. All right, so what's CuckooBox? No, what?
Sandbox environment.
All right. Okay, yeah, so it's basically a sandbox environment. It's really focused on doing dynamic analysis. So as you can see, this is just, so you usually have to have like a Windows license and or a Windows box, and then the Windows box sort of sits on the CuckooBox, and then the CuckooBox install does these things. It'll, as the malware is running, it'll trace all the different Win32 API calls. It'll dump network traffic. So instead of having to have Wireshark, you can use this. It'll take screenshots of what's going on, so that you can get that perspective as well. And then it'll dump the files that are created, deleted, or downloaded by the malware, and it does a trace of the assembly instructions. So it's an awesome tool. I heard it's a bit of a pain to get set up, but it's a great tool for doing dynamic malware analysis. Yes?
So the network traffic, does that dump it into a standard PCAP format, or is that some prototype?
Standard PCAP. All right, I guess that's Rob's phone. It's
Is it MEC?
It's mood music. I don't know. All right. So this is what it looks like. You know, as you can see, it's running on the left-hand side, and then you have sort of the Windows XP box, which is running on top of it. So methodology. This isn't the methodology that I'm going to talk about because, you know, I finished this at 9:15 this morning. But anyway, so the methodology, and so this is where it gets kind of fun. So there's a lot of quick triage actions that you can do, that just automated tools. So you're doing a little bit of dynamic analysis and a little bit of static analysis. But in most cases, these are just quick things that you can do. There's already tools built for it. So then you get into some of the dynamic analysis, and then the third step is to do static analysis. So the triage, if your company will allow you to do it, there are external services that you can use for uploading your malware to, and this is good. I mean, it isn't going to be as good as stepping through it, you know, step by step and doing a very detailed analysis, but they do sort of a great job of giving you an idea of what's going on there, so that you know where to maybe focus more. So there's Anubis, GFI Sandbox, which is formerly CW Sandbox. There's Norman Sandbox, and there's Threat Expert. Now there's others out there. You know, these are the ones that I've heard over the years. Does anybody else have any faves?
Did you see a Mastiff over the weekend?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah, it's actually right there. So.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to know how you felt about Mastiff.
Okay. Yeah. I think like.
Hey, Greg, can you repeat the questions for last week?
Okay. So at Shmoocon this past weekend, there was the release of a new tool called Mastiff, and what it is it tries to automate static analysis, so that you don't have to do it manually, obviously. I think it looks pretty good. Obviously, it was, let's see, I think the guy started it in like October or November, probably right after he submitted his Shmoocon talk. But it looks, I like the architecture. It's plug-in based, so anyone, like, if he doesn't, like, at the end of his talk, there was a call for, hey, help me write plugins to make this better. But obviously, it's young right now. There's a limited number of, like, it supports PDF, EXEs, and I think Flash. I'm not 100% sure. But it's nice, though. I mean, because what it basically does is there's a lot of existing static analysis tools that are out there. And so what it does is it'll look at the file using the Unix file, or I guess it's like TIF. Is anyone familiar with that? No, it's another tool for identifying what the file type is. Hey, George. Okay, you can. Oh, no. Now she's going to ignore me. Okay, now I'm going to get distracted. Anyway, but so what it basically does is it's this framework that figures out what the file really is, and then it'll run that file through existing automated tools, and then it dumps it out, and then and there's like right now, whenever you run it, there's like 10 or 12 files that it dumps out, so you can see a log of everything that it found. I definitely think it's a good. I mean, it basically kind of does this where it does the file and it does the oh, I don't have it here. Oh, TRID, that's it. That's the tool. And then based on what file type it is, it'll run the tools that are specific to it. So, but I think it's a good quick one. Yes, Andy?
But also a little bit more than that, what you're saying, because you can have files within files. There's a,
oh, yeah.
I forget the name, file that you showed that had a executable
Yeah.
HTTP, and it was able to identify all the different file types inside that file. So,
Yep.
just using a file isn't going to identify all the other files that are inside it. So
Mm-hmm.
takes it a step further.
Yeah. Did anyone else here see the Mastiff talk? So, anybody? Any thoughts? What are your thoughts on it?
I just thought it was a nice framework to kind of unify everything together.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to
So that's a
describe
question. You have a bunch of different
steps. Yeah.
steps here. Seems like it's a nice framework for
Exactly. Yeah. So you get a piece of malware and you run Mastiff on it, and it basically does much of all this, and it does, this, it does, it probably does this, it does some of these things here for the PDF tools, like it's some analysis there. So it's a great quickie triage tool for doing static analysis. So where was I? Yeah, so I basically talked about the rest of this slide. Now, these services up here, a lot of companies are very touchy, hey, we have this piece of malware, this is our intellectual property now, we don't want to let people know that this is going on with us. So a lot of these products also have in-house services, so you can actually buy this, like a GFI sandbox appliance and run it locally within your company. And also, VirusTotal is always great because you can just take the MD5 and certain or of your piece of malware and then search for it on VirusTotal. Any questions on step 1, triage? No? Did I miss anything for the experts out there?
You asked earlier about other sandboxes.
What?
You asked earlier about other sandboxes.
Others.
Fire spoke here a few months ago about Joe's sandbox.
Joe's sandbox as well, yeah. I think that's, is that only commercial though? All right. So Joe's, it's called like, it's like joebox.com, I think is the URL, so.
One thing worth mentioning is the storage of all this data that you're collecting.
Yeah.
It's generally not best in Notepad or some sort of Word file. So being able to find any one of these tools that hook into a backend database that stores all this information that you can query
Yeah.
is going to be valuable as well. I don't know if Mastiff does that.
Yeah, it just dumps it as text files as far as I saw. But so the statement was that what's really nice is if you can get these tools to load all its data into some sort of a searchable backend, so that you can do more structured queries on it. So the second one, and I think this is the coolest part, but it's the dynamic analysis. So this is where you actually, you put your malware on the box, run it, watch what it's doing, and then try to figure it out. So some of the tools I talked about before, Redshot, Wireshark, Process Monitor, TCPView, either take your initial shots or start those up so that it can watch things like the file and the registry and the network traffic and process creation. And then the next, so then you execute your malware, and at least from sort of a triage perspective, you just sort of watch it, and watch the things that are monitoring it, and for like maybe 15 minutes, or the activity starts to die down. Then when it's done You take your second red shot, you stop all your tools. Yes?
Are you going to discuss any malware that's actually has been out for a little while that actually written red shot, wire shard, Rockmon, and other stuff like that?
No. This is an intro talk.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. So the question was if we were going to, I mean, obviously there are some very smart malware writers out there, and they basically write tools that look for these things. And if the malware finds it, they'll actually shut down so that you have a harder time doing analysis on it. But I don't know. I mean, what percentage of the malware out there do you think does
that?
that?
Not a lot that I've seen, but it depends on if somebody else has grabbed some of that code.
Yeah.
You download, you go, oh, okay, well, that particular code does something that feeds various processes and stuff like that. I'm going to start importing that into my code.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not real widespread, but it is something that's coming up.
Okay. So
be aware.
Just to summarize, so it's not real, according to audience member, it's not real widespread, but it does happen. Any other? I saw a few hands.
I had
John?
a question.
Okay, yeah.
So does Redshot, it's been a while since I've used it, does it only take one snapshot and then at the beginning and then one snapshot at the end, or does it also monitor for changes?
No, it just does the one, and the one doesn't.
Okay.
So the question was, does Redshot, does it take a snapshot at the beginning and the end and then do a compare, or does it actually monitor it throughout? So the answer was one at the beginning, one at the end, do the compare. I think John had a question.
I was going to say that from an introductory perspective, you have to assume that the malware you're analyzing isn't VM aware.
Yeah. So just a statement that from an introductory perspective, what we're assuming here that the malware isn't VM aware. So because if it is, it'll detect that and just shut down so that it would be hard to analyze it. Any other statements or questions?
Virtual desktop infrastructure pushing more and more, that's becoming less of an issue.
Okay.
Because people want to spread their malware more.
Exactly.
They're giving up on it. Too many people are virtualizing all the things.
Exactly, yeah. So the statement was, data centers were virtualizing everything. So, if the malware writers aren't careful, their malware won't even run because, most of, we're heading more and more into having virtualized infrastructures versus the traditional hardware-based. So the last one is really hard, and this is probably more of an advanced thing. You would use Ollie Debug or IDA Pro, and you just it's sort of an art that, you do it for hours and hours, and then you just kind of learn it and get a feel for what goes on. So there are folks in the audience here that are probably do this for a living that they can't really describe how they do it. They just do it, and it's sort of a learned art. So anyway, for those, I don't know. I mean, yeah. And then kind of the last thing that I wanted to focus on was to where to learn more. I don't know, at Shmoocon this past weekend, OpenSecurityTraining.info had they're an excellent resource for people put open source courses up, and anybody could take them and teach them, but the whole goal is to, just from the open source model, you can improve upon those two and give back. So they do have a malware analysis sort of, I guess, track, or the way it looks here, it's more like a web, but but they definitely, like, you usually start out theoretically with doing, the right way to learn malware analysis is to probably learn assembly first, but that's very hard and boring, and most people don't want to do it. They just want to jump in. So, in most cases, you end up teaching stuff like dynamic malware analysis, because that's something that's easy to do that most people can pick up, and maybe doing a little bit of static analysis, but more from tools that are already out there. But eventually, like if you're going to make malware analysis or even reverse engineering your career, you're going to have to get experience in all these different areas. So these are two of the courses just that they have there. So the intro to basically doing assembly, and also links to a basic reverse engineering course, which gets into the fun part, which is there's a course that's based on the Practical Malware Analysis book called Reverse Engineering Malware, and they recommend doing these courses first, then doing this course. So those are some good places to learn more. So myself and Andy, last month we started. I don't know who's ever been to the packet parties at Nova Labs. Anybody? Yeah. So so that's where we basically, we'll go out to like a DEF CON capture the flag site or whatever, and then we'll download those challenge PCAPs and we'll go through them and try to figure out the challenge. So we really liked that, and it was awesome, and so we thought we would try to do the same thing, but from a malware analysis perspective. So basically the same thing, but we would focus on malware. And we had our first one last month, which is I gave a talk that was very similar to this, just as an introduction. This coming month, we're going to help people set up their malware kind of labs, virtual labs, and we have like a piece of malware that we'll do some basic dynamic analysis on, and then we're trying to figure out what the next steps are, because we're thinking that we might do sort of maybe two things every month, where you have an intro session, and then maybe the next week we do the challenge aspect. But we're kind of working through that. It's fun. So these are just, Lenny Zeltser, he's an awesome site. If you go to this malware analysis toolkit page, he actually you will actually start linking 5 or 6 levels deep, and he points off to all the different posts depending on what you're trying to learn. There's the Open RCE site, which is an excellent resource, and I don't know, Lord P was just sort of a leftover tool that I hadn't fit in, so it ended up on this slide. So just to kind of close things out, and this is what I talked about. But like I said, you have your basic architecture set up. You can set it up so that you either have a single box malware lab, or you can have a dual box malware lab. And then you also have your pre-configured environments like REM Knox and Sift and CuckooBox. So the methodology is basically do some quick triage, which involves doing both automated dynamic and static analysis, which is very quick, so you can figure out what's going on. Next, you do the fun part, which is I think which is doing the dynamic analysis, and then you can maybe do some static analysis depending on what your level of expertise is in like assembly language. But hopefully you do the first step, you do the second step, maybe a little bit of the third step, and this will give you the information that you need to either just take care of it yourself or pass it off to like the real forensics malware analysis guy. We have where to learn more, kind of talked about those, and and this is my funny conclusion slide, which is all right. And basically that's it. So any questions? No? Okay. Does anything that we should add there, or do you think that's a good process for?
Add Richard's stuff for his presentation.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I missed that. Well, that's one of the things that we're doing at Nova Labs. The stuff that Andy and I are doing, we're working with Richard just so that we're going to do some of the basic stuff, and then he's going to have his like 2 or 3 day long class that so that he wouldn't have to focus on the smaller, easier stuff. He can get into doing more of the real advanced malware analysis work. Yes, John.
You talked about reverse engineering the malware analysis book.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at a slide that showed 2 courses that you should for that.
Yeah.
Show that slide again.
Sure. Actually, if you go to the malware analysis or the practical malware, like if you go to this page, it actually says like you should take these first. Any other questions?
Two other places you might look, the security tube.
Yeah.
They have guys that'll post videos up that kind of hand walk you through some types of analysis that might be useful for some people. And then while it's not necessarily malware, Lena 151, those particular tutorials.
Okay. What is it? Lena?
Lena 151.
Lena 151.
Yeah, it's been around for years.
Okay.
And it's, I think, 40 different tutorials. It's mostly for crack meat type stuff.
Yeah.
But once you figure that out, that's the total you get for everything else.
So Lena 151.
Yep.
And Security Tube. Security Tube is an awesome resource. They have videos on not only doing malware analysis work, but almost everything imaginable. Great resource. Any other comments or questions? Nothing? Okay. All right. Okay, thanks.